So you're working 60 hours a week. Maybe you're working more. Early mornings, late nights, weekends. You tell yourself it's temporary. Once we hit this revenue goal, then I'll back off. Once we hire this next person, I'll have more time. Once we get through the busy season, I'll slow down. But it never happens. Why? Revenue grows, but your hours don't shrink. You just find new things to fill the time with, right? Here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. Working more hours is basically the slowest way to grow your business. And if you don't change how you operate, you'll be working 60 hours a week pretty much forever. And in this video, I'm going to show you why time-based growth doesn't scale, what actually drives revenue without consuming your life, and how to work less while growing more. So let's get into it. First thing I want to say is more hours doesn't mean more growth. Most founders think that growth comes from working harder. You put in more hours, you get more results. And early on at the beginning, yes, that's true. When it's just you, your effort directly translates to your revenue. You work more, you make more. But there's a ceiling. You can't work more than, 50, 60, maybe 70 hours a week before you burn out. And you might already be there. So if revenue is tied to your hours, that means revenue is capped. You've hit your personal output limit. The only way to grow from here is to change the equation. So you want to stop trading your time for revenue and start building systems that generate revenue without your time. Yes, you're going to have to obviously invest time to build those systems, but that's basically the shift. But most founders don't make it because they're trapped in the hustle mindset. More effort equals more results. That's how people think, right? Except it doesn't anymore. You're maxed out and you're going to hit a wall. So if you're like most of our clients, then this is how your 60-hour work. So let me guess what your 60 hours look like. So you're doing client work or you're doing fulfillment. You're answering messages, you're answering emails, you're in meetings, you're putting out fires, you're managing your team, you're assigning tasks, you're checking their work. You're doing all the small things that need to get done. But here's the problem. Almost none of that work actually creates growth. It just maintains what you have. It keeps things from falling apart, right? Client work generates today revenue, like the work you do with clients, make sure that they stay. Managing the team keeps operations running, putting out fires prevents problems, but none of it builds tomorrow revenue and scales your company. None of it creates leverage. None of this stuff compounds. You're spending 60 hours maintaining the present with 0 hours building the future, and then you'll wonder why you're stuck. Revenue comes from a few specific activities. It's getting new customers. It's keeping exit. Now let's talk about what actually drives revenue. It's very simple. It comes from a few specific activities. Getting new customers, keep existing customers longer, getting customers to buy more and more often. That's it. Those are the only 3 ways to grow more revenue. Everything else is support work. So now let's look at your 60 hours again, right? So how many hours are you spending on the revenue driving activities? It's probably less than 10, might be even less than 5, but the rest is just maintenance and reaction. If you're buried in operations with no time for the work that actually grows the business, you're obviously going to hit a wall, right? But here's what's worse. The operational work expands to fill whatever time you give it. You could work 40 hours or 80 hours. It doesn't really matter. You'll still be busy, right? The days are never long enough because there's always more operational work to do. It never ends. So the only way to stop it is to draw a line. You have to protect your time for the work that compounds instead of just maintaining. In other words, you have to make the leverage shift. So growing without adding hours means you're going to have to build leverage. And there's only 2 types of leverages in a business that really make the difference. There's people and there's systems. The people leverage means you're hiring someone to do the work you're currently doing. You do client onboarding, it takes you 5 hours a week. You want to hire someone, you train them, and then you hand it off. Now you got 5 hours back. But here's where most founders mess this up. They get the 5 hours back, and then immediately they'll fill it up with more operational work. They don't protect that time for revenue work, for strategic work, right? So they hire, but they don't really scale. They just spread the operational load across more people. And now I also got payroll to worry about. Systems leverage is building something once that works forever with maintaining it over time, of course. If you just let it decay, it's not going to keep working forever. But basically, you want to build systems. Right now, you're probably answering the same questions over and over again. And that could take you hours every week. What you want to do is you want to document the answers, build an FAQ, train your team to use it. Now that's hours freed up every single week, pretty much forever. But again, you're going to have to protect that freed up time and don't fill it with more reactive work. You want to use it for revenue work. Build marketing that compounds. Again, what revenue work? You're building marketing that compounds. You're creating offers that convert. partnerships, and so on, strategic work that will actually move the needle for your business. The work that actually grows revenue without requiring more hours from you. Now, first of all, if you want to work less and grow more, then you need to know where your time is currently going. So I suggest you start tracking your hours, and maybe you track them for 1 week, not vaguely, but specifically. So every task, how long it took, what category it falls into, and then at the end of the week, you add it up and you see, okay, how many hours did you spend on operational maintenance, client work, team management, admin, firefighting, problem, quick questions, things like that. And how many hours were spent on strategic work, generating revenue, growing the company. That means, marketing, sales, product development, strategic partnership, whatever that might look like for your business. I bet right now it's maybe 80% operational and less than 20% spent on strategic revenue, growth generating work, right? That ratio needs to flip around, or at least you want to start moving it towards 50-50. So now let's look at the operational work. What could be delegated to somebody else? What could be systemized so it doesn't require you at all? And what could be eliminated because it doesn't actually matter when you look at it closely? So you want to be ruthless because most of what fills your time isn't actually necessary. A lot of it is just going to be habit. Now, once you free up hours, you have to protect them. So you want to block time for strategic work and treat it like it's sacred. So this isn't time for, email or meetings or reacting to things or chats on Slack and stuff like this. This is a time for building. So maybe it's 10 weeks to start at the beginning, right? Then so that means you have 2-hour blocks. So that means you can have 2-hour blocks 5 days a week. Or you can have 3-hour blocks on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It doesn't really matter, whatever works, right? But during that time, you're only working on things that compound. Again, marketing, sales, growth generating activities. Or developing systems, building a team, developing a key hire, building partnerships, and so on. The work that actually creates future revenue without requiring future hours from you. That's what you want to be focused on. Everything else gets batched into the remaining time. Client work, team management, operational stuff, it all happens outside of these strategic blocks. And here's what you'll find. The operational work somehow gets done in less time when you give it less time because you're forced to be efficient instead of letting it expand. Now, when you start doing this, what you'll realize is that the hardest part isn't actually the tactics, it's the mental shift because you're most likely addicted to being busy. Most entrepreneurs are. Busy feels productive, busy feels important, it feels like you're working hard and therefore you're doing the right things, you're going to succeed and so on. But busy is not the same as being effective. Like you can be busy for 60 hours and accomplish almost nothing that moves the business forward. Or you can work 20 to 40 focused hours and double your company's revenue. The difference is what you're working on, not how long you're working. You have to let go of the idea that more hours means better results. Sometimes fewer but more focused hours create better outcomes. So you have to trust that the business won't fall apart if you're not always available. Now, you might have some mistakes and it might stumble at first, but your team will step up if you support them with training and systems and so on. That's a topic for another video. But you have to believe that strategic work is more valuable than operational work. That's where it starts, with the mindset shift. Because operational work feels more urgent, so it feels like it's important, but it's not. The strategic work is way more important. So there's a difference between urgent and important work, and that's the shift that you need to make. And it's basically an identity shift from worker to leader or builder of systems. You want to focus on building the machine that is your company rather than just doing the little tasks inside the machine. You want to become effective, not just busy, and that will get you from trapped to free. So let's summarize. You cannot grow your way out of 60-hour weeks by growing harder. It's just not going to work. You're already maxed out, and the only way forward is leverage. So you want to delegate the operational work that doesn't require you, systemize the repetitive work that drains your time, protect hours for strategic work that actually drives revenue. And you stop filling every free minute with reactive tasks. Start building things that will compound over time, and that's how you grow revenue while working less. And that's how you get your life back without sacrificing the business.